Broadcasting from the campus of Lynn Benton Community College. We are the Mid-Valley STEM-CTE Hub. I'm your host, Casey, and this is Closing the Gap. Welcome back, listeners. Today on Closing the Gap, we have Alice Welch, right?
Yep.
A budding biologist. Alice is working on their master's at Oregon State University in Integrative Biology. Hey, Alice, how are you?
I'm good. Very excited to be here.
Thank you. Would you mind giving us, the audience and the host, a brief explanation of what integrative biology is?
Yeah, so within the university, integrative biology is one of the departments there, and essentially we study like all aspects of biology. So from all the way down to like the tiniest molecule within a cell up to like full communities and ecosystems. So it's just like a very broad range of research going on in our department.
Awesome. So one of the things that I learned about you while I was sleuthing, well, I think actually you might have just sent it to me to read, but you had done some undergraduate work at the Grand Tetons studying, what kind of bird were you studying?
They're called red crossbills. It's a type of nomadic finch.
Awesome. So I would love to hear like the story about how you got that opportunity to do that, as well as how did you choose your topic? And was it given to you or did you choose it?
Yeah, so that one, partially it was given to me and partially I chose it. So it's a little bit of a long story. I was originally working for a different lab called Mason Lab, and they had snakes. And I really wanted to get involved with research, but they didn't really have any opportunities. So they had connected me with a different lab, the Cornelius Lab, that works with birds. And there's this really cool ward at Oregon State where you can basically do summer research. It's called the Summer Undergraduate Research Experience, or SURE. So I got connected to that lab, and I met with the professor, and basically we talked together, thought of what research ideas I could have. Their main species is red crossbills, so that was how that one came about. And so we decided that I would be proposing to look at body condition of like juveniles versus adults.
What does that mean?
So it's kind of like a bird version of BMI, so we're like using it as like an indicator of health and just like overall, like how well are they doing in the environment.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so I proposed that. I applied for SURE, and I got it. So then the grad students were going to the Tetons because that's where the crossbills happened to be at the time. So we ended up going there, and I stayed there camping for a month, catching a bunch of crossbills and like chasing them around in the forest.
Right on.
Yeah.
Were you into camping before you started working at the Grand Tetons, or
yeah,
was this something that came about because you had to?
Yeah, I was into camping. I hadn't done it in a while as of that time. So it was a little crazy, especially being out there for like a month, and you don't really have access to showers or anything, so it's just like bathing in random rivers and like all this, like, I don't know, like bushwoman kind of feeling. Like, it was just kind of crazy. Like, we're like these sweaty biologists like running through the forest, and there's like tourists that can see us like tracking a bird down. So
I would imagine you'd be pretty at home by the end of that month.
Oh yeah, for sure. You got really comfortable with nature.
That's awesome. Did you like love it or hate it being in the field for that long?
At first, it was really difficult. When you're tracking a bird and you're like, you don't realize how unkept the wilderness is, because like you see like the touristy areas, and then you get into like the wilderness because you're trying to chase this bird down, and suddenly there's just debris and like logs everywhere. Mm-hmm. And so like you're climbing and like trying not to like take yourself out as you're chasing this bird that's flying above, like completely happy, no issues. So yeah, it was a lot more work than I expected. It was really fun, and especially once I left, I wanted to go back.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I have this image in my head of you're like just ambling through all the underbrush, and there's just this bird that like doesn't even really like pay attention to you, and
yeah, exactly.
Just like getting jabbed by like down branches and stuff.
Yeah, I had quite a few scratches. I think I got a few scars too from falling while I was tracking them. So it's a good story.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I always wondered how biologists land on subjects of study. Mm-hmm. how do you determine what you're going to study, or like how did you land on vertebrae and birds? And I guess birds are vertebrae. You know, this
Yes, you're
same
good.
vertebrae thing came up for me earlier today in another podcast. So it's just on my mind.
Yeah, it's actually kind of crazy. This is actually one thing I was talking with some of the people like in my cohort, so other first years. We were all kind of like talking about our story, and one thing I have realized is that none of us really planned to get with the species that we're working with. It just kind of like fell into our lap, more or less.
Interesting.
So yeah, it was like I started with Mason lab with the snakes, and then I got connected to Cornelius lab with the birds, and then I really liked the birds. I'm also really interested in behavior, and birds have a lot more range that I could work with. And then through the Cornelius lab, I got connected to my current advisor, David Kikuchi, and he was working with birds. And so I was like, well, I guess we're going to continue working with birds. Like,
Right on.
So it's like, it just kind of happened, but like, I enjoy working with them, and they're really interesting to work with. They're weird things. So.
Yeah. I think it's kind of cool because you're working with sparrows and how they perceive predators, which are also snakes.
Yeah, so I ended up kind of tying the two things I was used to, like, together. Like, it worked out really well. Yeah, with my advisor, David, he's done a lot of stuff involving birds and snakes, so it kind of just happened to work out really well. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
Do you have a favorite bird?
Oh, favorite bird. Oh, man. It's a really random one, but I really like bearded vultures. They're really cool looking. Like, I don't even know that I just love them.
Bearded vultures, is that like different than like the normal kind of like vulture we see? Or that's a turkey vulture here, right?
Yeah, we have turkey vultures here. Bearded vultures are, honestly, it's really hard to describe. I would just recommend looking them up because they're like all feathers, but they can eat straight bones, and some of them kind of like are tinted like a reddish.
Okay.
They're really cool looking birds.
For the listener, I'm getting on my phone right now. Bearded vulture. I don't make a habit of doing this.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that is cool looking.
Yeah, it's a really weird one, but I'm like, that's the one I always think of because I'm like, it's such an odd bird.
They have really interesting faces, and they don't look as like grotesque as like a turkey vulture that's all
for sure.
skin on the top.
Yeah.
Okay. I lost my place. Give me a second. Got this.
You're good.
Oh, yeah. So when did you realize that you wanted to pursue a career in science? Were you always like into science, or like was it like your first, like when you were like in high school and you're like, I'm going to pick a direction to go? Was that the first direction?
So it's actually really funny. So I wanted to do medical research since I was like in 4th grade. A little bit of like a background. My dad has a brain tumor, and that was like one of my driving factors. Is I got really interested in like neurology and like behavior in that aspect in humans. Mm-hmm. So I really wanted to do like medical research in that way. And I went through like high school. I started college with that intent. I was a biology major because that would give me like the most general knowledge. And then COVID hit the end of my freshman year, and all my sophomore year was online. And like while I was taking all those classes online, I was kind of realizing, like, I don't necessarily want to do, like, an 8 to 5 just living in a lab for the rest of my life.
Sure.
And so I was, like, kind of lost, a little confused, didn't really know what I wanted to do at that point. And I took an ecology class at the end of my sophomore year. And there was just, like, that light bulb moment when my professor was talking about her research in the forest with, like, western lowland gorillas. And I was just like, I want to do that. Like, that's super cool. How do I do that? And so, like, I talked with my advisor, and he was like, oh, yeah, you want to go to grad school then? So then I was like, okay, so now I got to figure this out. So, yeah, I was junior and senior year. I was, like, trying to play catch up and, like, figure it out. But, yeah, Cool. It was very much a light bulb moment for me that just, like, flipped the switch straight over to wanting to do biological research.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So biologists that end up going to get their master's, those are the people that get to do the cool excursions in the Tetons for a month. And are people that, like, that would pursue biology just getting like a bachelor's, would they be able to also get opportunities like that, or is it something because you're so specialized in an area?
Yeah, it honestly depends on what you want to do. So if you want to do more applied, so like if you want to be more like working at a park, just doing like basic population like surveys and stuff, or just like more simplified tasks that are like direct for conservation, that would probably be about a bachelor's. Mm-hmm. Sometimes for a master's as well. if you want to stay in like academia, so like becoming a professor and being like at the forefront of doing research, then you'd need to get a PhD, then probably do a postdoc afterwards.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds, I appreciate how just how knowledgeable you are about this. And I don't mean to like sound belittling or anything. It's just that I don't know. You sound really smart, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. I had to do my research because I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I want to do with my degree. So I was like, we're starting with a master's to figure it out. Might turn into a PhD. Who knows? I just really like the research. That's what I care about. So
cool.
Yeah.
So could you walk us through the process of like applying to grad school and as a biologist? Like, how do you pick a lab that you want to work with? How would someone even go about starting to decide on that process?
Yeah, so I would say the way biologists do it is a little weird compared to most grad programs. So a lot of grad programs, you just kind of apply to the program and either like you just take classes or you get assigned like different professors that you can work under, versus with us, we have to find the professor who will be our advisor first before we can even apply. So they have to like approve you to even apply to grad school. So basically it's, you look at whatever universities you're interested in, and then just looking through professors' websites, kind of reading about their research, what interests you, and then contacting them. With mine, I was connected through the Cornelius lab. They told me about my advisor because he was just starting. It's a brand new lab on campus. So I contacted him and we met a few times, and then based on his research, he had me propose ideas that I would like to do in grad school. So that was kind of like my selling point, being like, look at all the cool things I can do. And
Nice.
so then at that point, he gave me the green light to apply, and then we went through like a recruitment event, and then he was like, okay, you're officially in, like you've made it.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Do you get like paid to do that kind of work as a graduate student, or do you still have to
Yes.
find like other employment?
Yeah, so I would say specifically with our department, we're kind of lucky we do get funded. So either it's a GRA, so graduate research assistant, so while we're doing our research we get paid, or we're a GTA, which is a teaching assistant, so we help teach some of the undergraduate level labs and classes.
Cool. That's really great. So it seems like it really enables you to focus on your studies and the work that you're doing rather than having to like outsource and
Yeah, definitely.
find
Yeah,
other opportunities.
especially when you're teaching, I feel like it gives you a good chance to like go back to the basics, and I feel like it gives you a new perspective a little bit.
Oh, so you're teaching right now too?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah, I'm teaching the 200 level bio series, so that's mainly freshmen who are biology majors.
Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you seem pretty young, not like in a bad way.
Oh, yeah.
Just that like maybe you just did all this back to back. So is that true?
Yeah, I'm one of the youngest in my cohort. Most people took gap years. I went straight from high school into college, graduated in 4 years, immediately got into grad school. So I've taken no breaks. I'm very young compared to everyone else.
Congratulations. That's really
Thanks.
awesome. Do you think it's like, is it strange to like be teaching at this point?
Some of it is. When I realized that I wanted to do grad school, I knew that there were opportunities volunteering-wise that you could do as an undergraduate, so you could help teach the exact same labs that you teach as a grad student.
Oh, cool.
So I ended up volunteering for those labs. So I ended up teaching the labs, which I'm now getting paid to teach. So I like was trying to prepare myself for it because I was not good at teaching when I first started. So it was very much a learning curve.
Oh, that's fascinating.
So, yeah.
What do you think was like the tipping point, like besides taking those classes and being more familiar with them, like in that volunteer way? Did you do any other kind of like professional development to make you feel more comfortable, professing your knowledge?
Honestly, it was just straight experience from doing the labs, because it's a 3-hour lab each week, and so it's like you meet on Mondays for a prep meeting with all the grad students, and then you're basically being mentored by one of the grad students, the lab that you're teaching with. So it was a lot of me working with the mentoring grad student, and so a lot of like one-on-one work, talking about it, getting me prepared, him giving advice and like helping give tips and stuff.
Cool.
So it was honestly just experience. And after the first time that I did it, I was like, that wasn't that bad. Maybe I should do that again. So then as I did it more and more, I've just gotten more comfortable.
Sweet.
Yeah.
And you had kind of mentioned, like, in our little preamble before this, that you were maybe thinking about, like, getting your PhD as well.
Yes. Yeah,
Would you
there's a possibility.
continue, like, teaching, or are you going to kind of go more in, like, I guess research and teaching kind of go hand in hand because you have time to do it if you're a teacher, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, not as it kind of depends on what your research is. Sometimes you can't, so then it will be like some terms you're teaching, some terms you're doing research. Part of it also depends on, I've applied for a grant recently and I'm waiting to hear back. I won't hear back until April, but it's like a 3-year-long fellowship. So if I get that, I don't necessarily have to teach. I just get funded to do research the entire time. So that's what we're aiming for. We'll see.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'll keep my fingers crossed for you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to loop us back around to the predator recognition stuff. So you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier in the conversation, but I was in the whole behavior of the birds and stuff. How do you determine if, like, this bird is showing predator recognition or not?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start by explaining kind of what my experiment is. So firstly, I'm currently working on building nest boxes, and then I'm gonna put them all around Corvallis area. So the birds are going to nest in there. I'm going to obtain the eggs, and then I'm going to hatch them and raise them in the lab. So basically, completely naive, haven't seen any predators before in their life.
Cool.
And then we are planning on 3D printing a bunch of these different models. So like things like a ball or a pencil or a stick, up to like actual snake models. So like gopher snakes, which are a huge predator for birds here. So basically, we're going to put them in front of the bird, and the bird's gonna have this little food dish that they're gonna want to approach to eat, but then they're gonna see like this scary stimulus, and so it's like depending on what level of hesitation they show. So like if they really don't want to walk near the food dish, it's likely because they're scared of the thing that's on the other side.
Okay, cool. I'm wondering how realistic these models are going to be, like these 3D printed models, because I feel like like maybe like a snake would like be moving, or they would smell like something, or maybe they're colored differently.
Yeah, so we have photorealistic color scans of actual species, so they should hopefully be about as accurate as possible as we can get for those species. Worst case, we can also do just different colors, because it even could be like, oh, it's just the fact that this one's like, black, that's scary to them or something.
Sure.
Yeah, so I'm hoping they should be realistic enough. We're mainly looking at visual recognition, so we're hoping that like we're not using like scent as an indicator, basically. So we're just keeping it the same between all objects, so then that won't be a factor.
Okay, so why predator recognition? Like, why is that interesting study for you? Like, what are you going to use that information for?
Yeah, so I'm just really interested in general, because we don't entirely know how birds are learning to recognize these. Like, it could be socially learned, or it's just like they get attacked by a snake and they're scared of them. Or it's just like, we don't know. It could be even like heritable. There could be an evolutionary trait here that's being selected for. Like there's been previous studies that have seen with some species of birds that they innately recognize species like coral snakes, which are extremely dangerous. Like, you're pretty much dead if you get attacked,
I've never even heard of a coral snake.
Yeah, they're pretty dangerous. It's like the red on yellow kill a fellow.
Oh, okay.
That whole rhyme.
Gotcha.
So that's coral snakes. So I lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
We were talking about why you were studying the sparrow's predator recognition.
Yeah, so specifically with house sparrows, they're not from this area. They've been introduced from Europe back in like the 1850s.
Oh, cool.
So one thing that I find really interesting with these guys is that the snakes here aren't the same. So they're exposed to new predators that they've never seen before. So I'm really curious to see if we can almost catch evolution happening, where you're seeing like, now they recognize this gopher snake, and they didn't recognize it before when they were first introduced. Like, we don't have background information on it, but it could show how successful they are at adapting to these new environments with these new predators.
Wow. That's pretty cool to be seeing evolution in the process.
Yeah, definitely.
Wow. Would you be intrigued if they ended up being scared of like the ball? Or
I think it would be very interesting, honestly. You never know what to expect with live animals. A lot of times they just don't cooperate, so
sure.
There's kind of the excitement of being like, this may work really well, or it could go horribly, but we might get something interesting either way.
I'm interested in like how you're gonna snatch the eggs. Is snatch the correct term?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay, so we're gonna how you're gonna snatch the eggs and then like raise the eggs into like full blown birds.
Yeah.
And sorry,
You're good.
So you're gonna raise the birds. Do they have like some sort of how do they learn like behavior? I guess like is it just between other like baby birds, or are there like older birds that are also with them, or are they just taking cues as they grow up from you and like your team?
So I'd say, okay, I'm trying to figure out exactly how to answer that one. Do you mean just like cues in general? Is that?
Yeah, I mean like because you're talking about how they're like you're gonna test if they recognize the snake or not.
Yeah.
And so, like I think there's like a lot of learned behaviors with like animals of like how to act and stuff, or like what to do. And I guess I was like curious if there's gonna be like older birds there that are gonna be teaching like the younger birds the ropes, or if they're like gonna be like not really understanding like what anything is besides like how they're perceiving it as like a baby bird.
Yeah, so they're very much going to be naive. We're not going to be teaching them pretty much anything, except we'll have like rocks and sticks in their cages, so those will be familiar objects to kind of use as a baseline against these other items that'll be new. So a lot of it, we're keeping them all naive just so we can test that innate part to see if there is like an evolutionary heritable trait that's causing them to recognize these snakes. We will also be adding like a social learning aspect, so using alarm calls, which have evidence for being innately recognized in babies. So we're going to have alarm calls with the snake and see if they get more scared of it. So if they can learn that the snake is really scary by hearing these, or by seeing another house sparrow, like a model, sitting next to a model snake and not getting attacked, if they can learn that, oh, maybe this isn't that dangerous.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Okay, cool. So how long are they going to live in captivity for like their whole life then, since they're kind of like coming up like without influence of other birds, or do you eventually put them out into the world?
Yeah, so we will have to keep them in the lab, especially because they are invasive species. I don't think we're allowed to release them anyways, but I don't think they'd necessarily have the survival skills. So they'll be eating out of food dishes. They won't know how to forage. So
that's a good point.
We'll have to keep them for whatever else.
Cool. There's so many like layers to this that I was like,
oh yeah,
like not expecting, and now I'm just like, well, I have all these like really like specific questions about your work.
Yeah.
I'll try to keep on track though.
Oh, you're good.
So, as a grad student, are you facing any challenges, or I don't know? It just seems like you're having like a pretty epic time. So I didn't know if like maybe you were struggling with something, and maybe we could like kind of pass that on to, as advice to like people that are coming up.
Yeah, I'd say grad school is awesome. It's also requires a lot of you. So it is a lot of hard work. It's also, I feel like, the happiest I've been in a while because I'm doing like exactly what I want to do with my life right now. So it's been really cool for that. But number one thing that I've learned is time management is really difficult because you're trying to get your research ready. You're also trying to teach, and you're taking classes. So it's just kind of like all these things are happening. So it's like you really have to get on getting things done, but also really important to what is the word I'm looking for? Blanking.
But you have to
it's like
scheduling.
You have to create like boundaries for yourself.
Oh, boundaries. That's a good word.
That's really important to take time for yourself and have that self-care. That's definitely one thing that we take an orientation class our first term, and so that's one thing that the professors have been hammering into this. That they're like, protect your time. Like, you need to take time for yourself. That's really important, and like go out and socialize and do all that. Yeah, so time management, still, it's an ongoing difficulty. I feel like I also have the unique difficulty of being in a lab that just started. So I'm the first grad student, also the only grad student, and my professor is new. So it's very much like we're both learning at the same time, and we're figuring this out, and I'm pretty much setting up the basis for all of this research. So there's nothing like built beforehand. I'm having to make all these connections and everything. So it's really crazy, but it's also really cool to like have that level of control over what I'm doing.
Yeah, totally. That sounds very empowering to be able to just, I don't know, you're kind of calling the shots in some ways.
Yeah, definitely.
So it sounds like if you there's so much going on in grad school that like uh not only is it you're just focusing on trying to get through this, but is there also like a aspect of people asking too much of your time that you need to block it off?
Yeah, I would say definitely. There's always going to be kind of like not really a fight, but kind of a fight in the sense that it's like you're teaching, and so the people who are like in charge really want you to spend more time like grading or preparing for the lab or working on that.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side, there's your advisor who really wants you to do like write a grant and work on your research and do that. And so it's like you kind of have like a bunch of different people telling you that you need to do this stuff, and at some point you're just like, all right, I'm done, we're taking a break, we're just not going to do that. So yeah, it's just really important to set those boundaries and to be very like strict. You're like, nope, we're not answering emails after 5 o'clock. Like, we're closing the laptop, we're done, we're taking a break. So
For sure.
yeah.
So it sounds like it's like the work aspect of like teaching
Mm-hmm.
is what's like the real kind of, I don't want to say like time suck, but like demand for your time, rather than like being in like your own classes or like you're in your lab and like doing kind of your homework or your research that might have been more present like in an undergrad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say teaching does take up quite a bit of time. So, I mean, it's 3-hour labs. We teach twice a week, so that's 6 hours, not including like grading and office hours, and then whatever meetings we have to get ready for the lab at the beginning of the week. So yeah, it definitely is a big time suck, but you learn to become a lot more efficient at it. And we're not supposed to go over like 20 hours a week, so that's the good news, is that once you get close enough that you're like, all right, we need to just dial it back, we can work on this next week, like it's fine.
Cool. Yeah. Is like your lab time, is that also like 20 hours a week, or are you kind of working collectively more than like a full-time job?
So in total it's 20 hours a week, so that includes all of
everything.
So gotcha. Including the 6 hours of being in lab with
Gotcha.
Students.
Okay, yeah. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Right on. So why do you think that people should study biology? I mean, like, if people were going to be like, if someone was going to be like, I could study biology or I could study literally anything else, why would you say that they should study biology?
It's pretty funny because my best answer would be because you want to do it. So
I guess like why, who would be like a really good candidate for like this type of field? Like what kind of skills would be good to have?
Yeah, so not even necessarily skills, but just kind of like the baseline is like number one most important thing is you need to have passion for wanting to like understand things about the world. Mm-hmm. And then like number two, like curiosity and like a drive to answer those questions. Like you have these questions about the world you really want answered and you're determined to get those. And so very much that's just kind of like the baseline for all biologists, is that we're just like, we're really excited, we're active learners, like that's what gets us really happy with life. So that's definitely the basis.
Sounds like it allows for like some creativity too, based on like the kinds of experiments you're setting up.
Yeah, there is definitely an aspect of creativity that people don't really talk about. I mean, trying to figure out my experiment is fun, and then I'm like, I'm trying to build these nest boxes for the birds, and so I'm like, all right, do I put them on posts? Do I put them over on this fence? Like, it's all this crazy design stuff I didn't expect to do. And
sure, yeah. Interesting. Are there any downfalls, like, to being a biology student, like, that you maybe wouldn't recommend or wish you knew beforehand?
I mean, the number one thing is it does take a lot of work. It potentially takes more work than you expect. So that's always a difficulty. I mean, for a lot of us who chose grad school, like, we decided we were ready for that. We want to do it, even though it is difficult. Another thing is just you really have to take charge of your learning. Mm-hmm. Compared to, like, in high school and in undergrad, you're kind of told the material you need to know. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, oh, just study these. We'll just test you on that material. And then you're just going to go off and you're never going to do that again. Versus once you get to grad school, you have to figure out what you need to know to get things done. And so you really have to be on that. And then even in classes, like, you take information that's really relevant for your research and, like, trying to figure out how to use that to benefit your research and your career.
Could you give an example of that where you're, like, finding something and then you have to, like, try to rope it in?
The only thing I can really think of just right now is that there's the Cornelius lab is also doing nest box related research. It's different than what I'm doing, but very much from seeing them do it and in the field, I feel like it's kind of helped me get an idea as to what birds might not respond to, because they use things like rubber snakes. Sometimes that doesn't really work out so well. The birds don't like to cooperate, and so I'm like, okay, we need to make sure that these are photorealistic, like the actual species, because it could just be like they know that it's fake because it's this weird flimsy looking thing that's just sitting there.
Yeah, like what is that down there?
Yeah.
So it smells like something weird.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's like learning by example of what other people are doing, and especially like when you're reading papers, as you're trying to like propose what research you're doing, you can kind of find research that's a little bit similar to what you're doing and kind of trying to tie that in. Yeah.
Cool. No, that makes total sense. Like, yeah, taking everything in and being, oh God, where it's like, it's not decisive, but like, you can see it and you're like, I need that. And then you use that.
Yeah, very much. It's kind of funny that you don't really expect it necessarily in science, I think, but it's like you see something and you're like, oh, that's really smart. I'm going to do that exact same thing just as a part of my research. Like, even though someone might be doing research about like whales, sometimes you'll find something in the methods that are really applicable to what you want to do. You're like, oh, that's really cool. I should use that. Like,
nice.
Yeah, it just kind of comes from unexpected places.
That's great. Yeah, that inspiration. Sweet. So, what would you tell yourself if you're like talking to your younger self, getting ready to like not only just go to grad school, but like down this biology road in general? What advice would you give your younger self looking back?
I'd say number one is stop doubting yourself so much, because that's definitely something, I mean, I still struggle with it. Imposter syndrome is definitely a real thing where you feel like you're the only one faking it. Like, everyone thinks that you're this amazing person, and you're like, but I don't understand what I'm doing. I'm so confused. And like, you feel like a imposter in this environment, but everyone experiences that. Even people who have been in this field for like 30, 40 years, they still feel that. So it's just trying to tell myself that it's like, it's okay that you don't know things. You can reach out, ask for help, and you can figure it out. Because like, I definitely didn't think when I started my junior year that I was going to make it into grad school. I had no research experience. So I was like freaked out trying to figure out like, how do I get 2 years worth of experience and somehow tie that into grad school and get in. So it's crazy.
Right on. Yeah, I can totally agree with the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
It is tough to deal with, but like, keep pushing people. So, any other advice you would like to give to people listening that are thinking about going into STEM?
Yeah, I'd say one of the most important things that I've learned is finding a mentor. So it could even be someone in a completely different field, just someone who's there to support you, to talk with you. For me, it was a PhD student in Mason Lab. He was very much like, he was the reason I got as much confidence as I did, I would say. Like, he was the one, like, kind of like behind me, like pushing me, like, oh, you can do this, you can teach, like, you got this, like, everything will be fine. Like, yeah, it was just, it's really helpful to have someone where you're like, they're very much in your corner, and you're like, I know that I can do this because they believe in me, and they wouldn't believe in me if I couldn't do it. So
yeah, totally. Oh, I love that idea. Yeah, a mentor, someone you're like really looking up to. Oh, that's a really good. I feel like a mentor is something I hear a lot, but I appreciated that caveat of like, but like, you also are like super stoked because you appreciate the work that they do.
Yeah, definitely was someone that I really look up to. The other thing I'd say is just building a community, finding a group of people that are also interested in the same things. It kind of happens organically with grad school, at least with my department, because all the first years we're all taking classes together. So we're doing like a lot of social events, and like we're planning on like going bowling soon, like all these fun things to like just bond together, but also just having other people that are having a similar experience, because then you can kind of relate, where it's like everyone's stressed out about teaching, but we're all in it together, we're figuring it out. So it's just that sense of community and feeling like you belong, that even though it's difficult, you still have other people that are experiencing something very similar.
For sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for joining me today, and also being patient with the process.
Yeah. Just happy to be here.
Well, I appreciate it. And if anyone out there that has a classroom full of students that's interested in biology, Alice is also looking for opportunities to come speak in classrooms. That's
Yep.
right?
Yep, definitely.
Okay. Cool. So, I don't. Do you want to provide how about they email me and I'll forward it to you or something,
yeah,
so we
that
don't
sounds
be
good.
blasting out your information on the internet.
That sounds good.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thanks for listening. This was Closing the Gap. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Closing the Gap. If you like this show, subscribe on Spotify. You can also find us on Instagram at MV-STEM-CTE, on Twitter at Mid-Valley STEM, and online at midvalleystem.org. Until next time, keep progressing.